I'm Reese. I'm sophomore biology major at St. Joseph's, originally from Kentucky.
Cool. I was just talking about Kentucky with the Lyft driver on the way over, about how jug band music, most people think it came from Memphis, but it comes from Louisville. And these guys used to play it on the streets most of the time, but when Kentucky Derby was in town, that's when they made their most money. And the guy was saying, oh, I don't know where, he was from some place in Russia or out there somewhere. He was interested. He knew a bunch about jazz. It was fun. So, well, glad you're here.
I'm Manoj. I'm a senior majoring in computer science and mathematics. I am an international student here, originally from Nepal.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi, I'm Lisbeth. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, just saying you.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm Lisbeth. Everybody calls me Liz. I'm a freshman and I'm a criminal justice major.
Criminal justice. Wow. Okay. My brother, who just passed away in January, was a police lieutenant in the NYPD. And he always had better stories than I did. Because teacher stories, some of them are good, but can't compare to cop stories. So anyway, that's interesting. You know, so fire away. You want me to follow this script here, and answer questions from that, or do you have anything you want to ask me first?
Yeah, I think that we're good to begin. So just to say the official opening, this recording was made as a part of the oral history project Voices of SJC by St. Joseph's College Brooklyn campus honors program students in spring 2021 semester. It was recorded on Friday, April 16th at 12:30 p.m. via Zoom. The interviewers are Reese Acton, Manoj Aryal, and Lisbeth Huela Tenemanza. The interviewee is Mr. Kenneth Byrne, St. Joseph's College class of 1972.
That takes care of that. So, well.
So we're gonna go with our first question. Our first question is, you first went to St. Francis College and then ended up transferring to St. Joseph's in 1970. Did you ever consider the CUNY schools?
Yes, I did. This is a long and twisted family saga, but I'll make it simple. I thought I was going to go to Queens College. I had what, I don't know if they still have this, it was called a Regents Scholarship. You went into a room, you took a test. If you got a certain mark, they gave you free tuition to the state schools. And if you went to the city college, you got free tuition plus a financial stipend. So I thought, great, I'll go to Queens College, they'll pay me for going to school. And my parents got worried that I would fall under a non-Catholic influence here or there, and I would turn into an atheist or something. So they decided to sneakily lean on me. And they told me about St. Francis, which a friend of my father's praised highly. And they have, I wanted to be a history major. And they said, oh, they have a great history department. And I said, yeah, I've heard that, but I got to pay for it. You know, this is crazy. So somehow they wheedled me into going there. And I got there and it was still not co-ed till the next year. There were all these guys, and it was a very fraternity oriented, drink until you fall on Remsen Street kind of place. And it just, you know, and I didn't like the history department. I learned almost immediately that I detested the chairman. I went to ask him a simple question and he took my head off. I don't remember what the question was, but there was no need for that. So I switched to psychology and I was doing okay until I ran into statistics. And I was never a math prodigy by any means. And this was hard. And I knew what I was looking forward to was a whole year of experimental psychology. You guys are probably familiar with the name B.F. Skinner, the guy who taught chickens to dance and all this stuff. The guy that ran the experimental part at St. Francis was a guy named Doc Maurer, and he was more Skinnerian than Skinner. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work as a counselor or a psychologist eventually, preferably with children. And I didn't want to spend a year having rats running around mazes and timing them. I did do some work for him. He was finishing his doctorate at City College, and his doctorate was titled Critical Flicker Frequency in the Norway Rat. And what my job was to do was flash lights in the rat's eyes, and the rats would blink, and I would measure this with the calipers. And I said, Christ, I'm going to be doing this for a year. You know, I don't want to do this. This is ridiculous. Then the world intervened. In almost this time of year, the Vietnam War was raging, and President Nixon decided he would invade Cambodia. And there were all these redoubled protests. And at Kent State, 4 students were murdered by the National Guard. Now, if anyone was detested, roundly detested in those days, it was National Guards people, because they never went near Vietnam. They had all the Army stuff, but they, you know, unless there was a flood, they did nothing useful. But shooting students, particularly, they shot 2 people that weren't even participating. One guy was buying an ice cream and he got shot in the head. So then we said, we were, every school in downtown Brooklyn and in lower Manhattan got together and put their newspapers together and refused to go to class. And it was like being in the revolution, you know. And I said, God, someday you're going to be thinking about this. Say, well, where were you when the revolution began? You were at St. Francis College, you know. We're talking to people from Pratt. And I remember getting chased around the Pratt campus by the, not Pratt, Pace campus by these hard hats, you know, that were pro-war. And there were all these promises made. We're going to restructure the school. We're going to be more concerned about social issues, and nothing happened. It just, everybody was going off on summer vacation. Bye. And I was thinking, and then they raised the tuition. So that was like insult to injury. So that was making me feel that it would be a good time to leave St. Francis. And this guy named Tom Usel, who had been taking classes here as a non-matriculated student, decided, they offered him, they said, we're going co-ed next year. You want to come here and get your degree in 1 year in 71? And he agreed, and they worked something out. And he saw me moping, and he said, why the long face? I said, oh, I hate this place. And he said, come to St. Joe's. It'll be fun. And I knew a bunch of young ladies from St. Joe's. I said, yeah, I know Rachel, and I know Lainey, and I know Lynn, you know, yeah, this could be fun, you know. So I went to see this guy. I think his name was John Torsha, and he sold me on it. He said, yeah, well, yeah. And they took every credit I had as a transfer. You know, usually if you transfer, they don't do that. But oh yeah, we'll take them all. You got a D in French, but then you got a C the next semester. That's no problem. Usually if you have a D in anything, guess again, we're not taking it. And then Tom, in the first year I was here, which was 70 to 71, he had some craziness in his personal life, and he left. And I became de facto the guy who was groomed to be the first male graduate in 72. So I hope that helps. I hope it's not too far afield here and there about politics and my family, you know. But that's how I ended up here. And it was cheaper, you know. It was a flat rate, $1,400. I don't know what you're paying, but it was $1,400 a year for the tuition. Take as many classes as you like. And since I had to catch up in child study, I took 19 credits a semester for the first 2 semesters, which is crazy. You know, I look back, I did, how did you do that? I don't know, but I did it and I got through. Okay, so that's how I did consider the other thing was, the reason I didn't say, let me go, oh, the hell with St. Francis, I'll go to Queens College, was because once you were in college, you had to have good marks, better than I had, to get into Queens College. If you were coming from high school, it was different. And I looked and I said, what? You know, I have to get an A-, an average, you know, I'm not going to get that. I stink in math, and So anyway, I came here. Seemed like a good idea. So, and I never regretted it. So any other questions? I'm sure I see we have some here.
Yeah. So you talked about the Vietnam War. Do you remember there being rallies for or like against it? And were you ever drafted for it?
No, I was never drafted. I had the student deferment. As long as you were maintaining a 2.0 index and taking 12 credits a semester, you could not be drafted. You just had to send them a note every year saying, "Hi, draft board, leave me alone." A friend of mine he went to Christ the King High School with me, and he went to St. Francis. And he was crazy. He just decided to drop out and join the Marines for 4 years, you know. And I had one friend, good friend, killed there, but I was never drafted. Oh, and then they had the lottery. They just put your birthday in the drum, and they pulled out number one is, you know, and I was like number 278, so I was pretty safe. You know, I was down the end of that. So, but I did demonstrate a lot of times. You know, I was a regular. You know, the FBI probably has pictures of me at 19. You know, and I remember several girls here who were stunned. They had a button that said "Free the Panther 21." Who were all on trial for ridiculous conspiracy, which the government lost. And one of them was Tupac's mom, as a younger woman. Yeah, but so I got this odd connection with Tupac because I was young. Free the Panther 21. She was locked up, and the cops would chase us, and if they caught you, they would beat the hell out of you. You know, so you had to be careful. So, but again, like I said, I thought. When the Kent State stuff started, I thought this is where we have a great climacteric and we shift. Didn't happen, but we did stop, at least slow it down, and finally stopped it. So anyway, any other questions? Well, yes, you do. Next question.
Yes. Your remark about the Panthers just reminded me. I'm currently reading Assata Shakur's autobiography. It's very fascinating. But to dial it back to when you were talking about St. Francis, I don't know if you were aware that for the past 10 years, St. Joseph Student Housing, we've cohabitated with St. Francis in Brooklyn Heights.
I know that.
So with your experience having lived in this neighborhood, what is a piece of wisdom that you took from that time, specifically around living in this neighborhood, now that pertains to St. Joseph students? What would you say?
It's such a different place now. The movie Motherless Brooklyn leaves me indifferent, but the book is really good. And it takes place long enough ago, maybe 30 odd years, that it was the old Brooklyn. You know, there were things that don't exist around it here anymore. I lived on Pacific Street for a while between Smith and Borum, and there were three of us, and we chipped in and we paid a little less than $75 a month. The bathtub was in the kitchen. It was an old law tenement. I would just say, you know, enjoy this part of the world. This is a neat community, this whole area of Brooklyn. Unfortunately, it's become so ritzy. I have this line I use. People say, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Brooklyn." And they say, "Oh yeah? Where? What part?" And I say, "I was born in Williamsburg and I was raised in Bushwick. And now I can't afford to live in either place." You know, it was funky. But I grew up in it was, my brother said to me one time, "Why did they live there?" I said, "Because your mother and my mother wanted to be in that parish. And our grandmother was down the next floor. We had to be around her. And my father was from the village. We could have, they said, "Oh yeah, we didn't take this place. We could have bought this house in someplace in the West Village. Why didn't you do it?" You know? So I would just say, you know, respect the people in Brooklyn. There still are, well, you can hear from my accent. There still are people that have that old time, Brooklyn pride, and it's just so diverse and so interesting. And I'm glad. I like this. I think the only place that's more diverse nearby is Queens, So enjoy yourselves. I didn't realize that, they had, is it a dorm setup or did they just buy house or what?
It's a privately owned dorm kind of co-op type of thing where different schools lease out different sections of the building. So NYU, St. Francis, St. Joseph's are the three biggest tenants, but then there's also some smaller schools like cooking schools and things like that. So,
wow. Yeah, if you're going to cooking school, you probably need a place nearby because that's hard. I knew these people who lived right next door to 245. There was, I can't remember what exact street address it was, but excuse me, phone's in the water. And I thought, how cool is that? You just roll out of bed and you walk around 2 doors down and you go to class. But their parents were paying it for them, but they could afford to do it. They rented a big apartment and they were lovely. I'm sure they go for crazy money now. If they're still a rental, I doubt it. I think they're probably a co-op. So I did not know that about that place.
yeah, we live in the old St. George Hotel. I'm sure you're familiar with it on
Yeah.
Clark Street. That is the building. So
that is a cool historical site. I used to swim there a lot when I was a kid, coming there from Bushwick, and they had a saltwater pool. Can you feature it? You dove in and it was like being at the beach, only a little funkier,
yeah, it burned in the fire in the 90s. Unfortunately, the pool cracked. Yeah.
That was. I won't tell St. George story. We'd be here for another half hour just talking about that. But that's a great part of that neighborhood too. You're right down near the water, and I love Brooklyn Heights. I wouldn't want to live there and deal with a car to park. That wouldn't be fun. So, oh, that's cool. Anything else? Well, what else?
Do you remember if there was any rivalry between St. Joseph's or St. Francis?
The way I understood it, it was from before I was there. They had 2 separate schools. They had this place, which was in a somewhat Tony neighborhood. Then they had St. Francis in their old site, which was torn down. That was in Carroll Gardens. It was torn down and made into a brand new middle school. And one of my friends taught there for a while. And they got the phone company to donate the old building. It's on Remsen Street. And then they got them the federal government to build a gym and an auditorium and a science place, And I remembered the federal government is giving us money and there's a bunch of us marching around saying, don't take the money, stop the war, and they go, oh, what are you doing? What do you mean don't take the money? We got to take the money. So they took the money and we got shushed, get away, silly children. That was, but there wasn't a rivalry in the sense that, they had different markets. St. Francis was all male, St. Joe's was all female. And they kept thinking about joining them. And then St. Joe's was in a better neighborhood than St. Francis was, down there and further out in Cobble Hill. And then after St. Francis moved to the Heights, that was a tonier neighborhood than this one. And this one got a little sketchy for a while. There was a lot of street crime, and I don't know how. It's terrible that heroin is still a plague, but back then it was. I can't tell you. It was like in certain neighborhoods, it was easier to buy heroin than it was to buy Wonder Bread or a quart of milk. Just heroin. It's all over. So it was like, oh, we were in a better neighborhood. We don't need you. Oh yeah, well now we're in a better neighborhood. You can go chase yourself. So anyway, I didn't see it as a rivalry. They were parallel schools. If that makes sense. anything else?
Yeah, our next question is, as you were the first male graduate in 1972, what was the most challenging part of transitioning into an all-female college?
I had taken a class in the summer where it was the first time I was the only male in a class. And since it was the summer and everybody was a transfer student, it wasn't that big a deal. They would tease me, but they were all new as well. And God, it was a class on existentialism. And I had a lot of fun in that class. And then when I started in the fall, in September, the first class I had to go to was called Teaching Reading in the Elementary School. And it was taught by this small, little petite nun, Sister Jean Marie. She was a good teacher, and she was really, and she had about 50 people in the class. So 49 of them had gone in and sat down and getting ready. And I walked in, and I was, again, there's, 50 women, including Sister Jean, turned and looked at me as I walked in, and I stood at the door and I froze. And I really got, I didn't breathe for a second. And they all smiled, and I went, oh, and I almost ran out. But I almost ran out and had a panic attack. But I said, get it together. I just went and I sat down. And after that day, it was okay. It wasn't a big deal. There was one, I was trying to think of her name. There's one older nun in the child study department who she used to say, all right, girls, and Ken. And I would say, would you cut it out? Yeah. So, but even she stopped that after all. But and Ken, she was a bit wacky, so, but a dear person, so that was her idea of a big joke, so.
Did it come with like a celebrity status, or did you make more friends with being the only male?
There was several cliques that hung together, and I was, well, first of all, I was male, and I couldn't be a full member of the clique, of the girls clique, and clique A, clique B. I was friends with people in about 4 of them. And one clique was dedicated to heavy drinking, and these girls could drink people under the table. And I don't know if it's still there. There was a bar around the corner on DeKalb Avenue. And remember, at the time, the legal drinking age was 18 years old. So you could walk in with, I just turned 18. I walked around with a draft card. People say, you shouldn't carry the draft card. How am I going to get a drink? Look at this. And they would say, oh, okay, there you go. But it wasn't a big deal. It just, it's all Ken, my friend Linda from one of the cliques, not the heavy drinking clique, but one adjacent to that one. She used to sit me down and say, look at your shirt. Who pressed this shirt? I did. God, don't you know how to press the shirt? And she said, what are you waiting for your mother to do it? I said, no, I press my own clothes. And she says, well, learn how to do it right. And she one time got an iron and took me off someplace, took my shirt off, I'm pressing the shirt. And she, those were great moments, the silly things like that. Christ almighty, look at this. There's a crease here, and you're not supposed to have a crease there, so. And remember, that was before permanent press, all that stuff, wash and wear. It was all, press this, do that. And they told me to stop dressing like a bum. And I said, I like to dress like a bum, because then people think I don't have any money and they won't attack me in the streets, because that did happen. It didn't happen to the girls as much, but if a guy walking around who looked like he might have a few shekels, there were certain, as I say, people who had a problem with heroin who would give me money. But there was no real problem with that. I never met anyone who came up to me and said, I thought it was a disgrace and a shame that they went co-ed, and I don't like it that you're here. Nobody did that. Everybody made me feel very welcome. And I had a good time. Of course, I worked like a dog that first year because I had to catch up. So 19 credits a semester. Ooh. Okay, next question.
Yeah. So how do you think your experience at St. Joseph's was different from other schools that were already co-ed during that time?
Well, the only stuff I've ever heard of was that there were some of the schools up in New England, the Seven Sisters and all that stuff, that were all female. There was resistance to changing, and I was teaching with a guy who was a lot younger than I, and he went up for an interview, and he said that he thought that there was a mob of girls chasing after him and his mother. Look, it's a boy. They're going to bring a boy in here, and they didn't want him. He said, "All right, just looking, But there was no big deal. And now the problem was, and if you're out there listening, guys, you know what I'm talking about. There were some guys who came in as freshmen, and they just thought, oh, I'm in college. And Animal House, the movie, hadn't come out yet, but they were sort of heading towards that. Of course, they didn't get close to that, but they acted very foolishly and immaturely, And I was running around from class to go, yeah, we're gonna get some more drinking. Thanks, but it's the middle of the day, please, let's try to remember we're in school. And but that was the only hassle I had with any other students. It was male students, and I almost punched one guy with it because I was with a girl and he was bothering her, and I said, "You want to be spitting your teeth out?" And he looked at me. I said, "Yeah, go away. That's an order. Get it." I'm a guy, tough guy from Bushwick. I don't take no mess, So I shoot him off, and she said, "You were gonna hit him?" I said, "Damn straight," acting like that. He was grabbing her. He was drunk, and I said, "Look, you're bigger than me, but I'll knock the crap out of you. Go away." So I didn't usually show that side of myself, unless it was absolutely necessary. A cutting remark would generally do it. So what's the next topic? Let's not talk about that.
Yeah, so our next question is, there were several clubs on campus, such as basketball club, glee club, child study club, and we were curious about students' involvement in this club. And do you have any fond memory in particular about any activities beside academics?
Yeah, I was in the Dramatic Society, and I had been in that at St. Francis, and I had been, in fact, my father, when I transferred here, said, "I know why you transferred, because they didn't give you a big part in the second play you were in at St. Francis, and you were Mr. Big Stuff, and you weren't going to put up." I said, "I didn't change colleges so I could get a better part in amateur theatrical, And these women I knew who used to go over to St. Francis and get in their play. They told me this. "Oh yeah, we're gonna have a spring production." And I said, "Oh yeah, what are they gonna do?" And this girl says, "The Caucasian Chalk Circle," which is a Bertolt Brecht play. And I said, "Oh, that's great," I said, "I love that play. It's so good. How are we going to do all that? There's a lot. There's all this music. We're going to get an orchestra." "Well, yeah. They're going to handle it." Okay. Then I see somebody else. I say, "What's this with the Caucasian Chalk Circle?" "No, we're not going to. We're going to do a dramatization of Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard." And I went, "Oh, the one about the ducks are going back to Moscow." Okay, that's more believable, right? And I said, okay, so we went from Chalk Circle to Cherry Orchard, and still wasn't right. Do you guys know who Enid Bagnold was? Okay, have you ever seen the old movie with Elizabeth Taylor, National Velvet? It's one of those things on TCM. It's if you have nothing else to do in your busy lives and you get a chance to see it. It's about a horse, and well, Enid Bagnold wrote a crazy mystery play called The Chalk Garden. So they had gotten the chalk right the first time, and they got me into this thing. And The director was hired from out of the school, and his friend, who was a strange man, was given the part of a guy who was supposed to be about 30 years old. I was given the part of a judge, and I was a retired judge, and I was older in the play than I am now, you know, and they made me look like this when I guess I was 19. And I won't go into the play, but I had fond memories of that, because after that I said, no more, I'm going to stick to music. I'm not getting caught up with this lunacy anymore. Actors are crazy. They're crazier than musicians by far. And there are a bunch of good stories. And anytime I met real actors and they said, so did you do theater? And I said, yeah, I was in college. And they said, oh, that's how I started. I said, and what did you do? I said, the Chalk Garden. And one or two of them went, oh, that play is so crazy. And I said, yeah, I still haven't figured out what it meant, you know. But there was one part in a production where there was a funny line, which we hadn't picked up on. And we're all on stage, and this guy gives the funny line, and we all realized how funny it was at once. And the woman who was playing the lead started shrieking with laughter, completely out of character. She's laughing and fell down on the couch. And I'm sitting on the couch next, you know, and I said, I pretended I was broken up and crying over the sad news or something, and I'm gagging on laughter thank God I had a handkerchief. And I'm going, oh, and everyone else is falling about the stage, and I look off stage, and the director's going, ah, you know, what are you doing? So that was a great moment. In that I said, that's it, no more plays, you know. But that was my one great. I didn't have time to do anything else. I worked on the yearbook in junior year, and that was again, there was too much fussing and fighting, and what can we do this, and why are we going to do that, and don't crop the picture so much. And I said, have fun. I have a nice yearbook, and besides, you know, when you go into high school, you want to show that you've been involved in things. But when you're getting out of college, who cares unless you were like a national debater or something, who cares? So they're not going to look at your resume and say, "Oh, I see you were in the Chalk Garden. That's a pretty wild play, kid." So, but there were always like things to do in addition to that. But I didn't go in for the more organized stuff. I don't remember sports here at all. Modern dance was big. There was like a modern dance squad, and they were really good. And they had a concert twice a year, once around Christmas and once around this time of the year. And they were quite good. And they always got new girls who were really good. And it was cool being friends with them, you know. So, but that's, you know, I didn't do any modern dance. So, next question.
Do you remember if there was any Greek life on campus at this point?
Not a bit. I don't remember one sorority. The boys, all 15, well, 14, since I was in it, well, maybe 12. They decided they wanted to start a fraternity. And I thought, you guys don't do enough drinking now, you know, why do you want to start a fraternity? You know, and what are you going to do with it? You know, toys for tots at Christmas time. You know, I don't remember much Greek stuff at all. In fact, I can't remember anything. So I don't know what it's like now, but it was nothing then. So
now we have a sorority and a fraternity. I'm in the sorority actually. So we got founded in '78, which is after you graduated.
Way after me. Yeah, I was already by '78. I'd been teaching for 7 years. So. Had a master's degree, you know, so I didn't keep up with that stuff. But look, you enjoy it? Is it good?
Yes, it's really fun so far.
If it's fun, great. If it's not, I found at St. Francis there were these Animal House style. For all the fraternities were like Animal House fraternities. There was no straight-laced one, you know, and in those days, you could rent a loft on Atlantic Avenue down there and put in a bar and bring in kegs of beer, and you know, as I have beer rackets every Friday night. Oh, we're raising money for, I don't know why, you know, they always raise money for something, but can you imagine, like, right, well, you'd have to be one hell of a rich fraternity to rent a loft in any place around here, you know. Maybe if you, I don't know, found some island offshore, you know, the Robinson Crusoe gang, you know. So, that's fast. I'm glad you told me that. That makes, somebody's going to say, so what was the fraternity thing? And I said, how did the interview go? So I learned they have a fraternity and a sorority, which we never did.
So in our research of kind of trying to figure out what campus life was like, we found some stuff in the 1960s about a room in Lorenzo Hall called the Smoker. And we believe that that was phased out before you were there, but we just wanted to know if there was any kind of hangout spots that were more informal on campus while you were there, and what those would look like today, I suppose.
I don't know what they called it. I don't know what it was for originally, but underneath that stage, perpendicular to the, not perpendicular, at an angle to the Dillon Center, there's that little building in there, and that was the boys' locker room. I got a free locker. And the guys that wanted to act like Animal House guys just sat in there and drank beer as much as they could. In fact, they're always getting in trouble for staggering around, falling out drunk onto Clinton Avenue. And so I steered clear of them. I knew there was a room, you could smoke pretty much anywhere. You couldn't say you couldn't smoke in a class. But if you were sitting around in like the cafeteria, you could light a cigarette, and there was always a blue haze there. But I heard of in Christ the King High School, when I graduated in 1968, up until 67, they had a smoking room for the seniors. If you had a permission slip from your parents, I give my permission for my son to smoke a pack of Winston on lunchtime, you know, and then when I came in, they said no more, and I smoked a bit. It would have been nice to have a place to go have a cigarette, but again, it was all blue smoke, and it was, I before my time, I don't know, you know, that's you know, long ago when Neanderthals roamed the earth, you know, and they were all smoking in the smoker. I don't know what the smoker was. You'd have to ask someone from the class of 68 or no, well, 58. That goes way back. And next.
So to kind of follow that up, like what were places around campus that people would go to eat at?
There was a place,
and, yeah, like between classes kind of thing.
Not much. There was a place around the corner on Waverly called Esther Grits, and it was just, you know, a little burger and fries place, and with the slowest service on the planet. You know, you'd order something and the waitress would take a pad and write the whole order out, no abbreviations, just one ONE cheeseburger with French fries, you know, light on the salt. And there was a place around the corner that on Myrtle. I was introduced to this sandwich, a hard roll. Do they still make hard rolls? I haven't seen them in a long time. It's an old-fashioned roll, and they would slice it in half, and they would put sliced ham on it and ricotta cheese, and it cost them 75 cents or something. And this girl, Delilah, turned me on to that. She said, "You're going to get a sandwich." I said, "What are you going to get?" She said, "Oh, you're going to get the ricotta and ham." And I said, "You can do this?" Yeah, you know. So every once in a while, I find something that's close to a hard roll, and I eat one of those. Put honey on it now. But there really wasn't a lot. to do as far as like going to places. There was like I said, there was one bar I knew of, and the rest of the restaurants were more expensive than we could afford, you know, and there was more of a sit down dine, you know, the ones that were around here then. I really can't think, and I was all over the neighborhood because I had friends at Pratt, and I worked at Mercy Home for Children up on Clawson Avenue for my second year. And I don't remember, oh, when I finally at the end of college had a car, I used to drive up to this place where it's just before you can get on the BQE heading towards Queens. There was an Italian restaurant that was pretty good, but that was like a haul. You know, you didn't walk there for a quick bite. On the way home, oh, let's get some clams. Yeah, but that's about it. There really wasn't a lot, and it's hard to fathom. You know how Brooklyn is like Eatsville nowadays, and not then, not in this neighborhood. Next. Are we good?
No. So also just following up on that question, without cell phone, how did people stay in touch during that time?
Smoke signals. No, it's funny. I was watching Bruce Springsteen's Broadway show, which I didn't think was very good, on television, and he was telling the story about driving across country, and he didn't have a license, and he really wasn't supposed to be driving. He was driving a truck, and the guys that the rest of the guys in the band were in cars, and they took off and they got separated. There was no way to get in touch with anybody. They knew where they were going in Los Angeles, and it was going to take 5 days. But he and the guy who was driving the truck, who needed to be spelled, they had to keep going. And he was describing how the guy would get the truck in neutral, and he would slide under the guy and put his foot on the clutch. The guy would hold the brake down. And then he says, once I was off, I could drive. He says, man, I couldn't start the thing. Cell phones have made an amazing difference in the way people communicate. I remember people knew that there'd be a phone where if you wet a penny and you put it in, it's supposed to be a dime, and you banged on the change receipt thing, you know, give me back my change. You know, it would take the penny and give you your phone call. And then the phone company would show up and figure it out, and they would fix it, you know, and you couldn't do it anymore. And this is hysterical. There was a bunch of people called the Phone Freaks, Phreaks, and they published very clandestinely all these tricks that you could blow noises into the phone receiver, and it would give you long distance, and you would get a free long distance call. And the best thing for doing this was a Captain Crunch whistle. So if you bought a box of Captain Crunch cereal and got the whistle, you'd take the phone, you'd dial, oh, you woo! And the whole notion of memorizing a code on a cereal box whistle, it seems so deliciously wicked. You know, the phone companies, and it was a monopoly. There was no, you know, million phone companies then. There was one. Ma Bell, and they Ramparts magazine published the how-to to get the free calls, and they clamped down. They took the master plates from the whole issue, and they took all the magazines they could find and destroyed them, and went to sued the magazine. Oh, it was quite something. But that was the closest thing to quick communication. It was, you know, this whole, you know, radical left hippie stuff. You know, let's beat the man, you know. So anyway, usually the man won, or it lasted for a while. But no, cell phones were. I still like walk around with this iPhone, and I can't believe I don't do half the stuff I could, you know. And my daughter and my son-in-law, they go, yeah, okay, look, I'm gonna show you this. And sometimes I wish people would leave me alone. That's the only thing. Stop bothering me. I'm a busy man. I'm old, but I'm busy. I still do things, you know. So Oh, one of the good things I do remember about extracurricular stuff was they had a show twice a year of anybody that could play an instrument or sing or something. And 2 or 3 times I had my jug band come and play, guys from St. Francis, where I had started the band, and everybody liked that. And then I'd say, yeah, we're going to be playing at this bar in Bay Ridge, and they wouldn't come. That's when I learned the musician's sorrow. You can you can have a great band, you can play good music. And everybody says, yeah, when is your band playing again? Oh, it's Friday, come on down. They don't, they still don't, So now I have a band with my daughter, and she's a great, I'm an okay singer. She's a great singer. So you sing, I'll just hang back here. And then her friends all got, when they were in their late 20s into their early 30s, they were always coming to shows. And now they all have kids. So you can't stay up all night and, watch Joanna sing, But that was a fun thing to do. That was about that and the dramatics were about it. So next.
And also,
Do you still keep in contact with any of your classmates that graduated with you?
Not really. It's funny because a friend of mine who went to St. Francis briefly, and I'm still in touch with him, he always asks about some woman that was 2 years ahead of me. So I was never in school with her. I knew her by sight from a party or something. And he always says, no matter who he's married to, he says, hey, there's so-and-so still, you ever in touch with her? I said, not since 1970, like, why would I be in touch with her? Oh, I realize that. So when people get weird like that, I just fell into this like elementary school, a little Facebook page and about the school. And this guy starts denouncing this woman because she didn't pay any attention to him in middle school age, And I was like, it's disheartening. Get a life, or how long have you been out of school? Oh, she was so stuck up. And you were an idiot. You still are. You worked at it. You succeeded. But no, I'm not really. I can't. Two women I'm sort of in touch with. The one lives up near New Paltz, but she graduated 2 years before me and laughed about, I'm just leaving and you're coming. It would have been fun. I said, yeah. And then a friend of hers who's 2 years older than I am, and she's like a gymnastics teacher and a yoga instructor, and but then she lives in Hohokus, New Jersey, which is not close. And she says, I can't go hang out in the city. I said, why not? I go to bed at 8 o'clock every night. I get up at 4:30 and do my morning yoga. I said, it's not even light out. When are you greeting the sun? It's not here yet. No, I got to keep in shape. I'm getting old. So am I, but I'm not doing that stuff, Good for you. I always say, good for you. But they're the only two I hear from once in a while. There's a few other women I wouldn't mind. If someone called me, got in touch with me on Facebook and said, hey, how you doing? I would tell them, and it would be pleasant, but hasn't happened.
yeah, and we're also wondering what kind of transportation were available during that time. How did you commute to the campus?
I lived with my parents out in Woodhaven, right on the border of Ozone Park in Queens. And I learned to my delight that if you walked down to Liberty Avenue and 80th Street, I lived on 85th and Atlantic. If you walk down, it was about 8 blocks, and you got the train, the A train. It would take you to Clinton and Washington by Fulton Street, and I would walk over from there. And the whole train ride was like 15 minutes or less. So that was really good. Of course, you had to watch out that you weren't on the train when the high schools got to let the kids out, because there's always some rowdy kids. And the last thing I wanted to see was oh, here's the train, time to go. And there's a bunch of cops chasing kids around. And they, you know, I was always worried that I didn't look that much older than these guys. And they would grab me and, what are you doing? You know, so it was pretty easy to get there, to get here from and get back there from Ozone Park. Now, and I can't, there were other ways to go, but they involved long train rides. If you ever get over to the Transit Museum, which is just downtown Brooklyn, right on the edge of the Heights, there's a car from the old Myrtle Avenue L, and it was wooden with metal tacked over it. And when the train came into the station, it was only one door. It was really ancient. And I think before that, they had a steam locomotive that used to pull it up and down Myrtle Avenue and went to Middle Village. And people used to use that because there were a lot of cemeteries out there. So if you were going to a funeral at the gravesite, that's the train you took. And they tore it down from Broadway and Myrtle all the way down to Bridge and J Street, somewhere around, I guess it was 1969 or 70. They said, we don't need this anymore. I don't know why, you know, but they just got rid of it. And they said, and the A train was far away from that. So I don't know what, I never understood that, why they do certain things. But yeah, transportation for me was okay. There were people who lived in Staten Island, and I thought, you take the bus to the ferry and the ferry to Lower Manhattan and then the subway, and you take it to Brooklyn. That's a bit much, don't you think? You know, why don't you go to someplace on Staten Island? You know, so that's my story about transportation. You know, zooming along on the A train and avoiding the fights.
So we were thinking that about perception of the college, how many of my peers personally, their only quarrel with the college sometimes is its image in our kind of globalized college market nowadays. And they say, oh, you know, it may be too small or too obscure to matter. But what was the attitude towards St. Joseph's? What would you hear when you said, I go to St. Joseph's College? What would be someone's reaction to you back then, kind of before that?
Yeah, I never could. There was a picture they found in they put in the 1971 or 2 yearbook, and it was a bunch of women from early on in it was probably right after the First World War. And they took these young women who were graduating and they put them around an old cannon and gave them muskets. And they were these old-fashioned 1920s pre-flapper dresses. And they're pointing the muskets at theirs. And then there's some quote from Simone de Beauvoir or Gloria Steinem. No, one of the old ones, so Simone probably, about the role of women in the world, you know. And it was a funny little picture, you know. But it was always considered this backwater where I found a yearbook sitting around in a room. And I said, look at this. This was from 1926 or something. And there's an ad for a business school. And it basically said, all right, girls, you got your degree. What are you going to do? You need a job. Learn how to type. Learn how to file. Learn how to do steno, you know, because you're only going to be a secretary, you know. You're, it was like, yeah, I don't know why you had to get a college degree, but good for you, you know. Now get with the real world and learn some friggin' typing, you know. And I remember thinking the insulting tone of this thing, and nobody said, we can't take an ad like that. What's the matter with you? These girls have worked hard and they've done very well, and they have, New York State says they've earned a college degree. What are you talking about? You know, you learn how to type, you know, bite me, you know. So I think that there was this perception that it was something like a finishing school, It wasn't, there was, they actually produced, I learned more about education here than I ever did in St. Francis, and there was, St. Francis was more like, I'm not knocking them. It was more like learn history and we'll throw a couple education credits into it and call it a history/education major. And you can go get a high school teaching license, teach social studies or English. But here, I had some of the best teachers when it came to teaching you how to do it. Now, nobody can teach you everything once you start teaching yourself, especially in the Board of Ed in New York City. Woo, you have to learn the ropes, and there are certain things you walk in, you go, what just happened? But yeah, I think that, try to get back to your question, I think it was not, for a long time, women weren't taken seriously. And some would say they still aren't, and I have no argument with that. Lainey, my friend, the one who lives in Hohokus now, was the first feminist, a real life feminist I ever met. She would yell at me for different things. Like my friend Joan gave me a soda at a party, and I was drinking the soda, and she says, "So a woman has to serve you?" And I said, "I'm sorry. I thought it was just Jody giving me a Coke." So she goes, "Well, you should get it yourself." I said, "Next time I will. Can I get you one then?" "No, I'll get my own." All these rules. And male chauvinist pig, that was the big word. You've screwed up. There were some people who would let you know, you don't pull that around here. I happened to go see some concert with different rock bands around, and they had whatever was passing as the Beach Boys. Brian was off being crazy, and I don't know if you know Brian Wilson. He's a study, and they did the song, which had been a hit for them several years before, "California Girls," and it's a cute little melody, but it's how cute the girls are in California. And here's the Beach Boys playing that, not realizing that things have shifted, and California Girls ain't gonna go and fly with this audience, and they're yelling and, "Yeah, boo, get off the stage, you male chauvinist pig." And Mike Love is going, "Dude, what the hell did I do?" So yeah, things get better, but they don't get perfect. It's a lot better than, believe me, it's a lot better. I was in on, this was a women's action, but there was it's still there. There's a bar down in the Lower East Side, well, just right by Cooper Union, called, I can't think of it. They've been there since 1847. And they had a rule, no women. We only allow men in. And then New York State passed a law saying, can't do that anymore. And they had to let women in. And there was a bunch of grumpy old guys sitting around, And I went in a couple of times. I said, it's a funky old place, but I don't know why everybody's fussing. The beer's not all that good. They brew their own beer. Yeah, and it tastes like soap. And the only food they had was saltine crackers, sliced onions, and Limburger cheese. Sliced Limburger cheese open, it smells like who left their gym socks around here, But all these women, "I want a beer," and they sold you 2 beers at a time. You can only, old Irish guys, you can only buy 2. Well, give me 2, and you can't share it with her. She's got to buy 2. And I just laughed my head off, So,
Are you talking about McSorley's?
McSorley's, Old Ale House, yeah. Which is, it's a thing to see, but just imagine saying that, "Oh no, women can't come in here." Well, we can't vote either, So, anything else? Next question.
Was there a lot of women rights activists on campus? Do you remember?
No. Lainey was an outlier. She was the first. Oh, she did a lot of interesting things. She became a serious dancer and all this stuff later on, but she started out she was the only one I knew who was a feminist and loud about it. One of the funnier things, she made me this is a silly story, but she made me she said, I'm going to make a fancy pair of blue jeans for you. And I said, okay, how fancy? Let me see. Now get the big bell. We all wore bell bottom pants. Oh, Christ. And these were called elephant bells. The bottom of the pants leg was about 2 feet wide. So she split the seams, sewed in fabric there, sewed patches that she had collected all over the place. So I look like a circus tent, you know, and I had this serape on over it. My hair's down on my shoulders. And I'm walking out in Queens with Lainey, who has an even more elaborate outfit with the vest and beads and what have you. And there's this little old man in a gray suit, and his lapels are like 1940s lapels are out to here. And he's got this tie that's really short and really wide. And he's got a pearl gray snap brim fedora. And he's looking at us and he goes, with disgust, hey, which one's the girl? Hey, I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay. So he goes, which one's the girl? And Lainey says, oh, you want to see who's the girl? You know? I said, stop. You don't have to undress in front of this morning. And I gave probably the best line I've ever had as a comeback line. I said, we don't have any trouble figuring it out. And the guy, but occasionally you get crap like that. Hey, hippie, why don't you take a bath? I'm not the one that stinks around here. You know? So, but it was best just to walk on by. And then in a couple of years, everybody else looked like that. So, or close to it. You know, I remember people calling me a bad name meaning gay. And 2 years later, they're wearing drawstring pink pants. You know, and it's some kind of a, you know, going to see the Allman Brothers and the Dead, man. You know, oh, far out. Yeah. Good for you. Yeah, wanted to beat me up 2 years ago. And now you're all hippie and whatnot. So just as I was losing that look, you know. But yeah, there weren't really a lot of feminists around here. Like I remember I was saying I had the Free the Panther 21 button, and I was getting for that, you know. So anyway, any other questions?
Being that both the colleges you attended were Catholic, were there ever any time that they worked together, meaning St. Joseph and St. Francis collaborated in any way?
Not that I could tell. I mean, there may have been stuff going. I mean, I'm sure the administrators in both schools knew each other and did certain things together, but they didn't invite me. So.
Or like the structure similar, the way that the schools were structured?
No, actually, St. Francis at the time, you're sitting down, I hope, you were required as part of the core curriculum to take 15 credits of philosophy. It didn't matter if you were a business major, 15 credits in philosophy and 9 credits in theology. So it was, and I said, why do we have to take all that stuff? It's the what was it called? The integrating discipline. If you know, and it's the old ideas from, you know, in the old medieval universities, if you went there, you had to understand the philosophers. At the time, it was the ancients and the medieval guys like Thomas Aquinas and Augustine and stuff. But for us, it went right up almost to the present, you know, with, the logical positivists were the guys. That's where I lost. I didn't want to read this stuff. The existentialists were all fun to read. That was like, oh dear God, could you come up with something more dry and boring, you know? And then later on, someone said, well, you know, it really is. You didn't give something. You're always on with that Husserl stuff. And that was, here there was nothing like that. When I think back though, I had 30 credits in child study and I had 24 in psychology, because you had to have not just a minor, but a concentration. And so there was a lot that they wanted you to know. And over here it was a little more practical. Who was a biology major? What was, one of you guys said that before? There was
Reese.
Oh, Reese, right. There were there was the bio lab looked like what's his name? Pasteur worked there. You know, he would have felt right at home. It was so old. And then we had the experimental psych teacher wanted us to do an experiment with cockroaches. And I went, cockroaches? Why don't you just come to my apartment? You can have all the cockroaches you want. No, we're gonna, and he said, what we're gonna do is we're gonna teach these cockroaches to not be photophobic. How are we gonna do that? Well, there's this thing you get, and it's like a fish tank with a metal bottom, and you put an electrical thing on the one side, and you have, that's it. The whole thing is in darkness, and the roaches walk around. And then you turn half of it onto the light, and the roaches, they flee the light, and they go in the other side, which is where the electricity is. And then you give them a jolt, they run to the light, back to the dark, jolt, you know. And he's telling me this, and I said, what happens if the roaches get out? He says, oh, they won't get out. I said, I don't think you've had enough experience with roaches, you know, they will get out. And I heard that Sister George Ackman, who was the principal, said to him that she was the boss. She said, no, you're not doing anything with Ricky. Don't think about it. So we did something else. I don't know what, but it did not involve roaches. You know, I said, so we'd have to have, just as an aside, this was not long after I left here. I had this girlfriend, and she went to Hunter, and she was Phi Beta Kappa, and she was summa cum laude. She was really smart, but I loved her so dearly, and she was a nut. And she said her roommate, she and her roommate decided they were going to buy a tokay gecko, which is a big lizard. And they're photophobic. They like to come out at night. They got the big gecko eyes they can see in the dark. And she was going to let it go in the apartment, and it would eat all their roaches. And I said, don't do this. And she said, why not? Well, it'll eat the roaches. It's a win-win. He gets free food, and we get less roaches. And I said, he's going to be eating roaches that have been exposed to toxins. And these toxins will build up in his liver and kill him. And when he dies, he will stink, and he'll probably be dead in some place that you can't get to him. And no, it's going to be fine. Oh, God. So I came over after teaching one day, and I had a key. I let myself in, and she and her roommate are standing there looking down, very shamed face. And I said, what's the matter? I said, oh, and the gecko's name was Jose, because there was a dancer named Jose Greco. So we had Jose Gecko. We think Jose is dead. And I said, and how do you know this? Well, we can smell something awful in the bathroom. So the goddamn lizard had crawled behind this clawfoot bathtub and expired back there. And she said, could you get rid of him for us? It's a good thing I love you. And I went out and I found 2 pieces of dowel, and I had to kind of pull the thing. It was starting to decompose, and I'm gagging, you know, and I said, listen to me next time. Okay. When it comes to ancient Greek, which she could speak a bit and read, I'll defer to your wisdom. But when it comes to killing roaches, I'm the boy, you know, and I'll tell you what to do and what not to do. You know, get some boric acid and put it all over the place. But I still remember telling her, and she was very nice to me for about 2 weeks afterwards. But catching that poor dead gecko and scooping him out from behind the bathtub, somewhere out on Ocean Avenue. Oh my. So next, anything? What was all this? Got the activities on the campus by feminists and.
Yeah. So as someone we've researched your yearbooks from around the time that you were there, and we noted that there were a lot of Sisters of St. Joseph in the faculty, a much higher proportion of the faculty than it is today. How would you say that contributed to the sense of community at the college, or that it kind of detracted from those who weren't of the faith?
There weren't that many people at the time that weren't Catholic. I had one friend who was Jewish. I met him. He was sitting on the lawn playing the guitar, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "I'm Ken." He says, "Yeah, I'm Kenny." Oh, we hit it off. And I said, "How did you?" And I looked at him. I said, "What's your last name?" He said, "Levin." I said, "You Jewish?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "What are you doing here?" You know, not that you're unwelcome, but it's surprising. I don't meet many Jewish guys on this campus. But yeah, it definitely was. The cool thing about having the nuns they were like all the other faculty. And the one thing I guess I could say is they were more extreme. If they were good, they were really good. And if they were not so good, they were a nuisance. They were hard to deal with. The registrar was a woman named Sister Ignatius. And you couldn't ask a question. You were always bothering, "What are you bothering me about this?" You know, because I need to know. Would you please answer it and just let me out of here? And I don't know where they came from, but they visited here and did a workshop. But there were these nuns who were radical peace activists, and they were going, sneaking onto naval bases and throwing blood on nuclear subs and getting arrested. And then you have these like women brought into court, and then in the modern nun, it's just like a modest dress and a cowl. And the judges going, "What's all this?" "I'll tell you what's all this." And they would give them what for. And a couple of them came over and we were talking about, this was after Kent State and stuff. And boy, there was no moss growing on those guys. They were really, I was impressed. I loved them all. And they were like fun to talk to and hang out with. And they really they said, "Boy, what are we supposed to be doing? Sitting in a convent praying all day, you know?" Well, if I wanted to be a cloistered sister, I would have done it. They wanted to teach. They wanted to educate not just children, but all people of all ages. And they wanted to make the world a better place and kinder and gentler and happier, you know, if they could do it, all in the service of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. So, you know, I wish you'd hear more. We should hear more from people like them, you know, rather than these, don't start me, yahoos, you know, so. But yeah, that was interesting meeting those guys, you know. It's funny, I had Sisters of St. Joseph in elementary school, and one of them was a holy terror. She was my eighth grade science teacher, and she ended up here. She was teaching in the 8th grade, and then she came here and was teaching Russian history, which was what she wanted. She had changed the name from Sister Alphonsus Ligori, which they had chosen for her, to Sister Helen Chaborsky, which was her regular name. And I just checked all my transcripts. That, "Did you take everything? Make sure you don't get stuck having to take her," because I'd be too scared to be in the room with her. She was a terrifying presence. And even though I was pretty much grown up, and I remember this girl comes into one of the cliques, you know, and sits down. I said, "Oh yeah, yeah," lights a cigarette. I said, "What's oh yeah, yeah?" And she says, "Well, I just had that new Russian history professor." I said, "Yeah." And she says, "You know what she did?" "Oh, she sang the Soviet national anthem in Russian." I said, no kidding." She says, "Yeah." And she said, "Don't underestimate the Russian people. The Russian people are going to fix things." Well, it's nice to dream, you know. So, but she was interesting. But I said, I have too much on my plate to go back and have my 8th grade teacher teach me about what Lenin was really up to, or something like that. But there were some interesting people. I really got a kick out of them. Like I said, Sister Jean Marie. Other than that, I can't think of anything. We were always having. I used to go to mass a lot. That's on a Friday afternoon we'd have mass, and then an agape, a feast. And I think if you look in the 71 yearbook, there's a picture on the inside cover of me shoveling coleslaw into my mouth. So, and I said, "Thanks. I'm really so glad you took this stupid picture and put it in the public part of the yearbook where everybody can can see it. So anything else?
Do you remember at the time they were opening up the new location at St. Joseph, the Brentwood location? Do you remember if there was any pushback or people didn't want it or anything about it?
No, it was just like, we're here and those guys are there and good luck, you know, that really wasn't an issue. I don't know if anyone objected, you know, or I always thought there could have been some parents who said, oh, good, now we don't have to send our daughter to Brooklyn. We can send her, we're moving out to Long Island and we'll send her to the campus in Brentwood, you know. But I've seen pictures of it. I haven't seen them in decades, but I remember saying, and I think my mother one time called me, oh, you see, they're opening up the place out. I said, yeah, I heard of that. Well, that's just not nice. I said, okay, if you say so, it's nice. So that was not something I was really involved in at all.
And then how did you experience the SJC Child Study Program, and how did it impact you in your career decision to go into education?
I loved working with the kids at the Dillon Center. I realized very quickly there were 3s and 4s and 5s, and my favorites were the 4s, because the 5-year-olds had this attitude like, yeah, I'm 5 years old. I know what I'm doing, you know, and I can talk better than these dummies over here. And I found them a little bit precious. They were the ones that they had attitude, you know. Not that there's anything wrong with attitude, but and the 3-year-olds were like puppies, you know. So you know, they were all toilet trained. That was the deal. They had to be toilet trained. But the 4-year-olds were right on the cusp, you know, and so. It was this time of year, and I had been doing a unit on spring. I kept saying, what happens in spring? And I had books and pictures and posters, and we're waiting for the doggone spring to come, you know, and it's not coming. It's still cold and blah, you know, what's going on here? Where is spring? And they called me by my first name. So they're going, Ken, when is spring coming? And I said, I don't know, as soon as it can get here. Why? We're gonna, okay. So it was very charming. And there was a little boy, we both had long hair. He was the only boy with long hair. And he's talking to me about, he's so bummed out because he wants to see the spring. And this other kid named Eddie, his name was Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre's a stinking spring, you know? And Eddie all of a sudden screams, Ken, Ken. I thought he'd hurt himself. I ran over. I said, what? And there was a hedge. And he says, look. And he's pointing down at a bulb that was sending up a daffodil, you know. And he goes, spring. It's spring. And all the kids said, I said, come on over here. Look, it's spring. And they went, yay, spring. And we're all dancing around. And sister, there was another, her name was Sister Helen. She was one of the teachers there. She comes out and she looks at it, and she was maybe 8 years older or so than I was. And she says, why, Ken, what did you discover over there? And I said, tell sister. And then I said, sister, spring. So when you have an experience like that, you say, I like doing this, you know. I had my band come in and play for the kids. They were knocked out, you know, and we were teaching them songs, we did a crazy version of the Wheels on the Bus, where we threw in stuff like, and the monster on the bus says, I'm gonna scare you, and the kids are going, I'm gonna scare you. Yay, you know. So all around the town, it was my most charmed moments on this campus were probably at the Dillon Center, watching the kids. And then Miss McBrady or whoever else was around, and what Sister Helen would say, now when you watch what his kid's doing, he does this in a certain way and blah, 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 blah. And I would take notes, you know, and it all made sense. So they could look at what the kids were doing and recognize certain behaviors and what stage they were at, and then communicate it to you, the student, the big student. There was also She didn't teach there, but her kids went there. Mrs. Davis. And she had a degree or something. She was just shy of a doctorate. And they just called her Mrs. Davis. She was a mommy, and she was a teacher, and she was a teacher of young children. And she, just, she really helped me a lot. She knew her apples, she really, and she got me to go. I said, I don't know what, she said, you need to observe infants. I said, I don't know any infants. She looks at me, she says, there's a foundling hospital on the Upper East Side. And I went up there and they gave me a note. And here I am, old hippie Kenny, and the nuns up there look at me like, what do you want to do? And I said, watch infants, in exchange for picking them up because they needed attention. So I'd pick up the baby and walk around with the baby, and then the baby would coo and gurgle, and I put the baby down. They'd say, you want to change the baby? Like I was going to say no. And yeah, okay. So I got used to changing babies and walking around, and the nuns after a day or two said, this kid's all right. And then a bunch of girls said, we need to go up there too, but we don't want to go without a man. I said, okay, I understand. We'll go together. It was always like, we'd leave in the middle of the day. And so I said, all right, I'll meet you out in front of the 245 warning. And they come out and they dressed up to go to the daycare, to go to the emergency shelter. And remember, that was the age of mini skirts and hot pants. And they're wearing fur jackets and mini skirts and hot pants and high heel shoes. And they looked like they were going clubbing, and I said, oh God, please, let's not have any trouble. Let's not have the nuns at the place going, what are they dressed up for, And of course, on the subway, two guys, one started some stuff, and I went and I made him leave our car, get away from the girls, or I'll slap you around the place. And if you complain, to the cop on the train, I got relatives in the PD, so get out of here. And we got back home okay, and they all went home. And I said, let's have a debriefing. No, dress down. You can't look like that on the subway. Not when I'm the chaperone. I can't have you being bothered. And besides, we got babies to take care of. And they said, oh, all right. I don't want to look like a slob. I said, just less fancy and less sexy too. They were too much. But that was a fun time there. And I still remember the Dillon Center. Spring, it's spring. And that's from the beginning of my career as an educator. A lot of water is under the bridge. And I've told kids that story in my classes, and they all liked it, because sometimes the stories I get to tell are just so grim, I taught at some really tough places, and it was always nice to remember there was this little Never Land, like Clinton Avenue, where they had nice kids who were worried about spring. So, okay, anything else?
Does anybody have any last questions? No, Reese.
Yeah.
We hate to keep you too long past 2 here, but to wrap it up, I was going to just see if you could identify who would have been your most impactful professor at the school, if that's within the CS program or outside of it. Mm-hmm. I feel like that would be.
Mrs. Davis was, and I'm not taking anything away from some of the other good teachers, but Mrs. Davis really taught me. I was supposed to watch a film one time and write notes about it, and it was the end of a long day, and I started to nod off and sleep, and she came by and hit me on the shoulder a couple of times. I'm sorry. And then I said something in my paper, my observation. I says, I missed some of this, but she wrote, because you were asleep. But she would give it to you, but she was definitely the best for me. She was, like I say, to take nothing away from any of the others, but she was special. I really liked her. And supposedly she lived on my block in Park Slope some years ago. And I never saw, people say, oh yeah, there's a woman down the block that she knew her, and she said, oh yeah, Mrs. Davis is there. I said, yeah. And I said, where is she? And then I realized, I said, even then it was 30 years later. I said, she probably doesn't look the same, you know. And then she's looking, I heard Ken Byrne lives here, but who's that old guy, you know, limping up the block? But she was the best, Mrs. Davis. I don't even remember her first name because she was Mrs. Davis. That's all she needed. Didn't have to be professor this or doctor that.
Yeah, and we're also wondering if you still keep in touch with some of your old colleagues from SJC.
Not really. Over the years, I would run into somebody here and there, or once in a while I'd hear somebody. Like I said, the only two I'm vaguely in touch with, and it's been a while for both of them, left in 70. You know, they were leaving, graduating as I was transferring in. I used to get a newsletter, and I don't know if they ever had a reunion, because I've been to Christ the King reunions, and I was at an NYU reunion and a new school reunion, but you know, not really. I can't say I've kept up with that. I was too much of an anomaly at the time, you know. They all went their way and I went mine. So, but I did learn some stuff, and I got a teaching degree, and I got a teaching license, and I even took the old-fashioned Board of Ed test to get my degree, my license, which was ask me about anything. Medicine is not a topic in which of the following novels. Why do I have to know this to teach second grade? You know, medicine's not a. And I'm thinking, do I know any of this stuff? But I took it. I don't know if I passed it. I passed the test. I don't know if I got that one right. So that's how they used to run it.
Well, thank you so much for answering our questions.
Okay. Oh,
we
you're
really
welcome.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thank you for giving me the honor and distinction of being the old guy that came back to tell some stories. So the better stories are, the funnier stories are, and sadder, the ones about when leaving here and going out into the real world to teach. That's when the rubber meets the road, as they say. You know, and even though Mrs. Davis taught me a lot, and Sister Jean Marie taught me a lot, you walk into a classroom, it's like it's a whole new ball game. You know, it's just, this is not what I expected. So, well, let me get going here.